The rain hammered down with a relentless fury, turning the park into a cold, muddy wasteland. 6-year-old Ethan Blackwood lay helpless in the muck, his wheelchair overturned and his frail body trapped beneath it. His cries for help were drowned by the deafening storm, his small voice lost in the downpour. Passers-by hurried by, oblivious to the struggling child, splashing through puddles without a second glance. Ethan's caretaker had stepped away for just a minute, but that minute stretched into an eternity of isolation and humiliation. Despite being the son of a billionaire tech mogul, in that moment, Ethan was just another child in need of help, forgotten by the world. He strained to push himself up, but his arms, weak from the effects of his spinal muscular atrophy, couldn't do the job. Tears mixed with the rain on his face as he lay there, helpless, unable to free himself from the muddy trap. He called out once more, "Help!" His voice barely carried over the storm. Out of nowhere, a tiny hand reached down to him. It was a girl, no older than Ethan, with eyes that shone with determination. Her shoes were worn, the soles patched with duct tape, and her jacket was too big for her. But there was something about the way she moved, something that suggested strength beyond her years. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice breaking through the rain like a beacon of hope. Ethan turned his head to see the girl standing before him, drenched but unbothered. "I can't get up," he admitted, feeling ashamed. Without hesitation, she dropped her backpack and waded into the mud without a second thought. "I'm Lucy," she said, as if they were meeting on a sunny day in a park, not in the middle of a storm. "I'll help you, but you'll get dirty." Ethan's protests were weak. "My chair's really heavy," he said, watching as Lucy's sneakers sank deeper into the mud. She just laughed, a sound that seemed far too bright for such a dreary moment. "Trust me, no one at home will notice a little more dirt," she said with a wink. It was funny, and yet it was also sad how casually she said it, as if dirt was the least of her concerns. Together, they managed to get Ethan into a sitting position. Lucy tried to right the chair, but it was too heavy for her small frame. "This thing is heavier than my dad after watching football all Sunday," she joked, but her smile faltered for a moment, as if something lingered behind her words. Ethan looked at her more closely, still trying to process how this stranger had come to his aid when no one else had. Despite her muddy appearance, there was a quiet dignity about her. Her clothes were old, but clean where they weren't covered in mud. Her eyes, intelligent and focused, revealed a wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. Then, a familiar voice boomed through the rain. "Ethan!" Richard Blackwood, Ethan's father, rushed toward them, his designer suit quickly ruined by the downpour. Behind him, the caretaker followed, looking embarrassed and out of place in the storm. "Dad!" Ethan called, relief flooding his chest. Richard reached them in seconds, kneeling in the mud without hesitation. "Are you hurt?" Richard asked, his hands carefully checking Ethan for injuries. His eyes then flicked toward the caretaker, a look of fury crossing his face. "You're fired! Get out of my sight!" "I'm okay, Dad," Ethan reassured him. "Lucy helped me." Only then did Richard seem to notice the girl standing by, her clothes soaked and her shoes barely holding together. "You helped my son," Richard said, his voice softening slightly as he took in her appearance. Lucy shrugged, her expression nonchalant. Anyone would have helped. Her gaze shifted to the people still walking by, oblivious to the scene. "Well, anyone should have," she added quietly, her words carrying a weight that Richard felt. "Thank you," Richard said, the sincerity in his tone surprising even him. "What's your name, young lady?" "Lucy Martinez, sir," she replied. "Where are your parents, Lucy?" Richard asked, his tone turning more concerned. "Home, I guess," she replied, her eyes downcast. "I was walking home from school in the rain, alone." Richard's brow furrowed, but Ethan, now safely in his father's arms, spoke up. "Dad, we should give Lucy a ride home. It's the least we can do." Richard nodded, calling over to his driver, who appeared with an umbrella. "Of course, it's the least we can do. As they headed toward the sleek black SUV at the park entrance, none of them realized that a seemingly random act of kindness would change all their lives in ways none of them could foresee. Lucy had never been in a car like this before. The leather seats, the quiet hum of the engine as they sped away from the park, and the unfamiliar luxury made her feel like she was in a different world. She perched on the edge of the seat, careful not to get any mud on the pristine interior, despite Richard's repeated assurances that it didn't matter. It did, though. The car felt too perfect, too polished, like something she didn't belong in. Richard, clearly focused on something else, broke the silence. "Where do you live, Lucy?" he asked gently. "Westside Gardens. Building C," she replied, her voice a little more hesitant. She knew the place was one of the most run-down apartment complexes in the city, and it felt strange to say it out loud now, sitting in a billionaire's SUV. Richard exchanged a glance with his driver, who was silent, but Lucy noticed it. She tried to ignore the discomfort that gnawed at her, but it was hard. "And you're 7?" Richard continued, his business mind already calculating something in the background. "Yes, sir. 2nd grade at Westside Elementary," Lucy said, trying to sound confident. "But I'm in the gifted program. They let me sit in with the 4th graders for math and science." Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. Ethan, who had been quiet until now, grinned. "I'm homeschooled, but I love science too," he added, trying to join in the conversation. As the SUV approached the worn-down apartment complex, Lucy's shoulders stiffened. She hadn't expected to be here in such a luxury car. But now, as they neared her home, she felt the weight of the disparity between their worlds. "You can drop me at the corner," she said quickly, hoping to ease the discomfort. But Richard ignored her. "We'll see you safely inside," he said, his voice firm but kind. The car pulled up to Building C, a gray, decrepit structure with peeling paint and missing roof tiles. The driver held an umbrella, keeping Ethan dry as Richard insisted on carrying him up the stairs. Lucy led the way, her face flushed, her heart pounding as she took them to the 3rd floor. At apartment 3C, she hesitated before pushing open the door. "Mom, I'm home," she called, her voice tired but warm. The apartment smelled of cigarettes and stale beer, an all too familiar scent. A woman, dressed in a waitress uniform, was sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning a stack of bills, her face a picture of exhaustion. "Lucy, what the duck," she started, but her words trailed off when she saw the visitors in the doorway. Richard Blackwood, Ethan, and the umbrella-wielding driver stood there, as out of place as a snowstorm in the desert. "Mom, this is Ethan and his dad," Lucy said quickly, her hands nervous. "Ethan fell in the park, and they gave me a ride home because of the rain." Rosa Martinez blinked, still trying to process the situation. But as soon as she recognized Richard Blackwood, her face shifted from confusion to surprise. She stood up quickly, smoothing her hair. "Mr. Blackwood, I thank you for bringing Lucy home. I'm sorry about the mess." Richard raised his hand, cutting her off before she could say more. "I'm the one who's grateful. Your daughter helped my son when no one else would. She's quite remarkable." He studied Lucy more closely now, as if seeing her in a new light. Rosa looked at Lucy, her tired face showing a flicker of pride. "She's a smart girl, too smart for her own good sometimes," she said quietly. From the back bedroom came the sound of a crash, followed by muttered curses. Rosa flinched. "My husband," she explained unnecessarily, her voice tense. "Daddy lost his job at the factory," Lucy said matter-of-factly, her eyes downcast. "He's been resting a lot since then." Richard's expression tightened, but he masked it quickly. "Mrs. Martinez, I wonder if I might speak with you and your husband about an opportunity for Lucy," he said, his tone polite but serious. Before Rosa could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. A man appeared in the doorway, unshaven and blurry-eyed. "Who the hell is this?" Frank Martinez demanded, swaying slightly as he looked at the visitors. "Frank, this is Mr. Blackwood and his son," Rosa said quickly, her voice shaky. They helped Lucy. Frank's gaze shifted from his wife to Richard and Ethan, calculating something behind his bloodshot eyes. Well, ain't that nice of you, he said, his tone now oily, almost too smooth. Lucy is a real helpful girl, always thinking of others, right, Rosa? Rosa nodded quickly, eyes down. Richard, however, did not flinch. Indeed. In fact, I'd like to offer Lucy a scholarship to Westbrook Academy, he said, his voice steady. It's a school for gifted children, and based on what I've seen today, Lucy would thrive there. The room went silent as the weight of Richard's words hung in the air. Lucy's heart skipped a beat. The Westbrook Academy? The best private school in the state? That's Rosa started, but she couldn't finish. Frank's demeanor shifted again, this time to something that could only be described as opportunistic. Well now, that's mighty generous. Our little Lucy deserves the best, doesn't she, Rosa? He put his arm around his wife's shoulders in a way that made her flinch. May I think about it? Lucy's voice broke through the silence, surprising everyone in the room. Richard looked at her with newfound respect. Of course, here's my card, he said, pulling one from his pocket. Have your parents call me when you've decided. As they were about to leave, Ethan whispered something to his father, who nodded and addressed Lucy again. We're having a small gathering at our home this weekend, a science demonstration I've arranged for Ethan. Perhaps you'd like to come? You might meet some students from Westbrook. Lucy's face lit up. But before she could respond, Frank's voice boomed from across the room. Of course, she'll be there, right, Rosa? Lucy couldn't stop thinking about the invitation as she followed Richard and Ethan through the large, imposing gates of the Blackwood estate. It was all too surreal one moment. She was struggling through the rain in a worn-down neighborhood, and the next, she was walking through the sprawling grounds of a billionaire's mansion, surrounded by manicured lawns and luxury at every turn. The estate looked like something from a movie, a world so far removed from her reality that it made her head spin. As they approached the massive house, her mother, Rosa, looked at the surroundings with wide eyes. Lucy could see the awe and the discomfort in her mother's expression. She had spent years working long hours in a small apartment, scrubbing floors and serving food to make ends meet. But now, standing in front of this mansion, she was a long way from the world she had known. When they entered the house, Lucy was nearly overwhelmed by its grandeur. The foyer alone was larger than their entire apartment. The high ceilings, the polished marble floors, the expensive furniture, all of it felt so foreign. It was hard not to feel out of place. Richard, however, moved through the space with ease, greeting people as if he belonged in such surroundings, as if this was just another day. Lucy, I'm glad you could come, Richard said, his voice warm as he led her through the house. Ethan's been asking about you all morning. Lucy looked up and saw Ethan's face light up when he spotted her across the room. She smiled as he wheeled himself toward her with impressive skill, maneuvering his wheelchair like a pro. Lucy, you came, he said, his excitement palpable. Come see this. It's a Tesla coil I built with my tutor. Lucy couldn't help but grin. She had always loved science, and the idea of seeing a working Tesla coil in person was beyond thrilling. Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious. She followed him eagerly to the center of the room, where a metal contraption sparked and hummed with electricity, sending arcs of lightning jumping between two metal rods. Professor Winters, Ethan's science tutor, stood by the coil, overseeing the demonstration. Several children from Westbrook Academy were gathered around, watching in fascination. But one child stood apart from the group, a girl with perfect blonde curls, her arms crossed and her eyes narrowed. Everyone, this is my friend Lucy, Ethan said proudly, introducing her to the group. Lucy, this is Professor Winters, my tutor, and some kids from Westbrook Academy. The children murmured greetings, sizing her up with polite curiosity. But it was clear they were more interested in the science demonstration than in making a new friend. Only Professor Winters seemed genuinely interested in Lucy. So you're Lucy, he said with a warm smile. Ethan's told me all about you. He says you helped him when he fell. Lucy nodded shyly, not used to this kind of attention. Yes, I helped him, she said, trying to sound modest. I like science, especially astronomy. Professor Winters raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. Astronomy, huh? Well, that's fantastic. You might find our labs here interesting. We have a lot of resources for students interested in space science. Before Lucy could respond, the blonde girl, who had been watching her closely, snorted softly. NASA? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Don't you need a college degree for that? Lucy stiffened, her smile faltering. She didn't understand why this girl seemed so intent on belittling her. Ethan frowned beside her, sensing the tension. Lucy's in the gifted program, he said, defending her. She does math with the fourth graders. The girl, who Lucy now realized was Olivia, Ethan's sister, rolled her eyes. Great, she muttered, clearly unimpressed. Professor Winters seemed to sense the awkwardness and stepped in to diffuse the situation. Perhaps you'd like to help us with the next demonstration, he suggested. We're going to show how electricity can create music. Would you like to give it a try? Lucy nodded enthusiastically. For the next hour, she lost herself in the excitement of the demonstration, helping connect circuitry and explaining concepts to the other children. It was a world where she didn't have to hide her intelligence or feel out of place. Despite Olivia's glares from across the room, Lucy found herself thoroughly enjoying the experience. Ethan beamed with pride as he showed off his latest project, the Tesla coil, while Professor Winters asked her more questions, clearly impressed with her knowledge. Richard watched from the sidelines, his expression thoughtful as he observed the two children working together. When the demonstration was over, Lucy made her way to the refreshments table, hoping to take a break from the intensity of the afternoon. But Olivia was there too, and she wasted no time in cornering her. So, Olivia said, her voice sweet but her eyes cold, Daddy says he's giving you a scholarship to Westbrook. Lucy hesitated, unsure of how to respond. I haven't decided yet, she said carefully. Olivia let out a small laugh, though there was no warmth in it. Haven't decided? Are you stupid? Do you know how many people would kill for that opportunity? Lucy felt a flicker of anger rise within her, but she stayed calm. I'm not stupid, she said evenly, and nobody should kill for school. Olivia's smile faded. Listen carefully, Lucy. Westbrook is my school. I'm the top student in my grade, president of the junior science club, and lead cellist in the youth orchestra. And Daddy is my father. Lucy met her gaze directly. I know who your father is. And Ethan is your brother, though you've barely spoken to him all day. A flicker of something guilt, defiance, crossed Olivia's face before she quickly masked it with her usual disdain. You don't know anything about my family, she snapped. I know Ethan built that Tesla coil mostly by himself, which is amazing for anyone, especially a 6-year-old with physical limitations. And I know you haven't congratulated him once. Olivia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You think you're so smart? You think because you helped Ethan one time, you can just walk into our lives? Well, enjoy it while it lasts. Daddy gets these projects sometimes, trying to save the world one charity case at a time, but he always loses interest. Before Lucy could respond, Richard appeared at her side, a distinguished woman in a tailored suit beside him. Lucy, he said, smiling. I'd like you to meet Dr. Ella Phillips, the headmistress of Westbrook Academy. She's very interested in meeting you. Olivia's expression shifted immediately, her smile turning into a radiant grin. Dr. Phillips, she had exclaimed, her voice now full of warmth and charm. I was just telling Lucy about our wonderful science program. As Dr. Phillips greeted Lucy warmly, Olivia's eyes flicked back to her with a calculated look, a subtle reminder that the battle for Richard's attention wasn't over. Dr. Phillips, the headmistress of Westbrook Academy, extended a warm hand to Lucy, her expression both professional and friendly. Mr. Blackwood speaks very highly of you, she said. I understand you have quite an aptitude for mathematics and science. Ethan has shared with us how you helped him with his Tesla coil project. Lucy smiled shyly, trying to stay calm despite the weight of the situation. I like science, she said simply. I've always loved space, especially astronomy. Well, I'm certainly impressed, Dr. Phillips responded, clearly intrigued. Perhaps you'd like to visit our campus next week and see our laboratories. We could give you a tour of the facilities. Lucy felt her heart race at the thought of seeing Westbrook Academy's state-of-the-art labs. She had dreamed of attending a school like this, where her love for science could truly flourish. For a moment, everything else seemed to fade into the background, and all that mattered was the opportunity that lay before her. Before she could respond, Ethan wheeled himself over, a broad smile on his face. "Lucy's really smart," he said, his voice filled with pride. "She helped me with the Tesla coil, even though I thought it was going to be too hard for her." Dr. Phillips raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Really? I'd love to hear more about that," she said, her interest piqued. "I'm a fast learner," Lucy replied, a touch of confidence creeping into her voice. "I learned the principles of electromagnetic fields and modulation really quickly. It was a lot of fun." As the conversation shifted back to the demonstration, Richard stood at the edge of the room, observing the exchange with a contemplative expression. His thoughts seemed to be elsewhere, but he was clearly impressed by Lucy's intelligence and grace under pressure. After a while, Olivia approached her again, her usual icy demeanor still intact. "So," she said, her voice smooth and calculated, "you're really going to go to Westbrook? Don't you think it's a little too fancy for you?" Lucy turned to face her, a little surprised by the directness of the question. "I haven't decided yet," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Olivia gave a mockingly sweet smile. "Of course you haven't," she said with a shrug. "I guess you can't make those kinds of decisions without asking Daddy first, right?" Lucy's temper flared slightly, but she held her ground. "I don't need to ask anyone," she replied firmly. "I can make my own decisions." Olivia's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Well, just so you know," she said, her tone lowering to something darker, "I'm the best student in my grade. I'm the one who gets all the attention at school, and I'm the one who's supposed to be the star." Lucy looked Olivia square in the eye. "Then maybe you should work harder to deserve that attention," she said calmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. Olivia's expression twisted with anger, but before she could respond, Richard approached them. "Olivia, that's enough," he said firmly. "Let's not make things more difficult than they already are." Olivia, taken aback by her father's tone, said nothing, but her eyes lingered on Lucy with an intensity that made the air between them feel thick with tension. Richard turned to Lucy, a soft smile returning to his face. "I'm glad you could make it today. We're having a small gathering at our house this weekend. Ethan's birthday party, actually. I'd love for you to come, if you're free." Lucy's face lit up at the mention of Ethan's birthday party. It was a chance to learn more about her new friends and get a glimpse of the world she had never even dreamed of entering. "I'd like that," she said, her voice sincere. Richard nodded, pleased. "I'll have the driver pick you up. We'll make sure you're comfortable." As the evening wore on, Lucy felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. The mansion was filled with people, many of whom she didn't know, but who all seemed to look at her with polite interest. She felt like an outsider in this world of wealth and privilege, but at the same time, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This world, so different from the one she had known, was now a part of her life, however briefly. At one point, Lucy excused herself from the conversation and slipped into a quiet corner, where she found a table full of books about space and astronomy. Her fingers brushed the covers as she flipped through them, reading titles like Cosmos and The Universe in a Nutshell, each one sparking her imagination even more. The room was full of distractions, but here, in the company of these books, Lucy felt like she could breathe. It was then that Ethan found her again, rolling his wheelchair over to where she was standing. "Lucy, you've got to see this," he said, his face glowing with excitement. He led her to a corner of the room, where a group of children had gathered around a large, glowing device, a Tesla coil in action, sending arcs of electricity dancing through the air. As they watched, Ethan leaned toward her and whispered, "This is just like the one we built, but way cooler." Lucy couldn't help but smile. Ethan's enthusiasm was infectious, and for a moment she was lost in the wonder of it all. She had never seen science come to life in such an exciting, hands-on way. Ethan's joy, the spark in his eyes, was all the encouragement she needed. It was moments like this, moments of discovery and excitement, that made her feel like she truly belonged here, no matter where she had come from. As the night came to a close, Lucy couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude toward the Blackwoods. This chance encounter, this unplanned act of kindness in the rain, had led her to a world she had never imagined. She was no longer just a girl from a struggling family, she was a part of something bigger now, something that could change the course of her future forever. The following week, Lucy found herself in an entirely new world. Westbrook Academy was nothing like the school she had left behind. The campus was vast, filled with sprawling lawns, state-of-the-art labs, and buildings that looked more like modern art than places for learning. Lucy had never seen anything like it. The moment she stepped through the gates, she felt like she had entered a different universe, one where every corner seemed designed to inspire brilliance. Her first day was a whirlwind. The students were polite, but distant, sizing her up with curious eyes. Most of them seemed to come from families like the Blackwoods, wealthy, well-educated, and polished in ways Lucy had never known. She felt like an outsider. Her old clothes, mismatched shoes, and the weariness of her life before Westbrook standing in stark contrast to the pristine uniforms and confident postures of her classmates. Yet, despite the sense of being out of place, there was something else, something stirring inside her. The realization that she had earned her place here, that she had a chance to prove herself, was both humbling and empowering. Lucy navigated the halls with tentative steps, trying to find her bearings. The walls were lined with awards, plaques, and portraits of alumni who had gone on to change the world. In the classrooms, students engaged in discussions that were so advanced, Lucy had to fight to keep up, but she was determined, and though the material was challenging, she thrived in the intellectual environment. For the first time, she didn't have to hide her intelligence. For the first time, her curiosity was welcomed and encouraged. By lunchtime, she had found her way to the cafeteria, where the food choices seemed like something out of a five-star restaurant. Sushi, fresh pasta, and even a dessert station with chocolate fountains greeted her. Lucy couldn't help but marvel at the options, wondering how a school could afford such luxuries for its students. It was there, in the bustling cafeteria, that she met Zoe, a dark-haired girl with round glasses and a friendly smile. "You must be Lucy," she said, walking up to her. "I've heard about you. Do you want to sit with us? We have room." Lucy hesitated for a moment, but Zoe's genuine warmth made her feel more at ease. "Sure," Lucy said, grateful for the invitation. Zoe led her to a table where two other girls, May and Abigail, were already seated. They greeted Lucy with polite smiles, but there was no awkwardness in the air, just the simple ease of new friendships being formed. "So, you know Olivia Blackwood?" May asked after they had settled in, taking a bite of her sushi. Lucy frowned slightly. "Sort of. I'm friends with her brother, Ethan." The girls exchanged knowing glances. "Olivia doesn't usually hang out with new students," Abigail said carefully. Lucy nodded. "She doesn't hang out with me, either," she replied. "She made that pretty clear." Zoe nodded sagely. "That's more like the Olivia we know. No offense, but she's kind of the worst." May chimed in. "Brilliant, but terrible. She wasn't always like that, though. She used to be nice in first grade. But then her brother got really sick, and she changed." Lucy's eyebrows shot up. "Sick? You mean his condition?" "No, his cancer," Zoe said, her voice quieter now. "He was diagnosed when he was 3. That's why he uses a wheelchair. Didn't you know?" Lucy shook her head slowly, feeling a wave of understanding wash over her. "I didn't know." No one told me. As the girls continued talking, Lucy felt the pieces of Olivia's behavior start to fall into place. Olivia's resentment, her need for attention, everything clicked. While Ethan had been fighting for his life, Olivia had been competing for their father's affection, a battle she hadn't been able to win. And now, Lucy's presence, her connection with both Ethan and Richard, seemed to threaten the delicate balance of Olivia's world. Before they could continue the conversation, Lucy noticed a commotion across the cafeteria. Olivia stood in the center, surrounded by a group of girls, all giggling and whispering as they pointed in Lucy's direction. A wave of self-consciousness washed over Lucy, and her face flushed with embarrassment. She tried to ignore it, but the laughter stung. Zoe, noticing Lucy's discomfort, stood up. "Ignore them," she said firmly. "Come on, I'll show you the library. It's the best place in school anyway." Lucy hesitated, but Zoe's comforting smile reassured her. The two girls left the cafeteria together, heading toward the library, where they found a quiet refuge. The library at Westbrook was like nothing Lucy had ever seen. 3 stories of bookshelves lined with countless volumes of knowledge, reading nooks with cozy chairs, and advanced computer stations where students could access research materials. It was heaven for a bookworm like Lucy. "This is amazing," she breathed, running her fingers over the spines of books she'd only ever dreamed of reading. Astronomy, physics, engineering. There was no end to the possibilities here. Zoe grinned. "I thought you'd like it," she said. "Hey, we have a coding club that meets here on Thursdays. You should join us." Lucy's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." The rest of the day passed in a blur of new experiences. Advanced classes, navigating the labyrinthine halls of Card, Westbrook, and figuring out where she fit in this new world. By the time the final bell rang, Lucy felt both exhilarated and exhausted. It was a lot to take in, but she was ready for it. She was finally where she belonged. As she headed to the pickup area, her mind raced. What had happened back in the cafeteria? Olivia's reaction to her, the whispers and the pointed fingers. It wasn't just about school. Olivia clearly didn't like her, but it went deeper than that. There was something else going on, something Lucy couldn't quite put her finger on yet. She was about to get into the Blackwood car when she overheard a conversation that stopped her dead in her tracks. Olivia's voice, angry and sharp, carried across the room. "Absolutely not," she was saying. "Dad, you can't be serious. It's already arranged." Lucy's heart skipped a beat as she walked closer, hearing the unmistakable tension in the words. Richard's voice, calm and firm, answered. "The Martinez family is staying in the guest house until they can find suitable housing." End of discussion. Lucy froze, her blood turning to ice. Guest house? Her family? What was going on? Lucy's mind raced as she tried to process what she had just overheard. The Blackwood guest house? Her family? This couldn't be happening. She stood frozen, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her like a thick fog. Olivia's expression, a mixture of anger and disbelief, burned in her memory as she quickly turned and walked toward her father, her words lingering in the air. As Richard made his way toward the parking area, he seemed unfazed by Olivia's outburst. But Lucy's thoughts were spinning. What had happened? Why would her family be staying at the Blackwood estate? Was it because of the fire at her apartment? Was there something more to it? As they arrived at the Blackwood estate, Lucy noticed that things seemed different now. The grandeur of the mansion, once awe-inspiring, now felt like a cage, something she had been thrust into without her consent. As they passed through the gates, she couldn't help but feel like an outsider again, caught between two worlds that didn't seem to mesh. The comfortable familiarity of her old life, and the luxurious, overwhelming world of the Blackwoods. It was too much to comprehend. When they entered the guest house, Rosa was standing in the living room, her eyes red from crying. Frank, on the other hand, was sprawled on the leather couch, holding a beer in one hand, his expression glazed over. Lucy felt a mixture of anger and confusion. She didn't want to be here, didn't want to be in this strange, opulent place with her family's future uncertain. But there was no going back now. How was school? Rosa asked, her voice quiet, though her eyes flickered with something Lucy couldn't quite place. It was fine, Lucy replied, though her mind was far from the school day. What's going on, Mom? Why are we here? Rosa sighed deeply. Mr. Blackwood offered us a place to stay, she explained, her voice shaking slightly. After the fire at the apartment, he insisted. We don't have anywhere else to go. Lucy nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about all of this. She hadn't even realized how much her life had been upended until now. They had gone from barely scraping by in their small apartment to living in a mansion, with a billionaire offering them a place to stay and even providing jobs for Rosa and Frank. It felt too good to be true, and Lucy couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to the story than Richard Blackwood was letting on. Mr. Blackwood has been very generous, Rosa continued. He's even offered to pay for your school supplies and clothes. Everything. We're starting over, Lucy. Starting over? Lucy repeated, her voice soft with disbelief. But what about the fire? What really happened? Rosa paused, her gaze shifting to Frank, who was barely paying attention to the conversation. It was an accident, she said finally. But Lucy could hear the hesitation in her voice. The fire. It wasn't planned, but they say someone tampered with the wiring. We just have to be grateful for Mr. Blackwood's help. Lucy's mind reeled. Was it really just an accident? Or was there something more? The fire had been too perfectly timed, right after she had started at Westbrook. After everything had begun to change so suddenly, it felt like it couldn't all be a coincidence. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a soft knock at the door. Lucy turned, her heart sinking as she saw Richard standing in the doorway. He looked less like the powerful billionaire she had come to know, and more like a man caught between two worlds. His expression was serious, almost apologetic, as he stepped into the room. I need to talk to you, Lucy, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Lucy's heart raced as she followed him to the study. The room was dimly lit, the only sound the soft ticking of a clock on the wall. Richard closed the door behind them, his face troubled. Lucy, he began, taking a seat across from her. I know you've been through a lot these past few days, and I want you to know that everything I've done, everything I've offered, is to help you and your family. But there's something you need to understand. Lucy raised an eyebrow, her thoughts racing. What do you mean? Richard leaned forward slightly, his eyes locking with hers. I've been watching you, Lucy. I've seen your potential, your intelligence, your drive. But I also know that there are forces at work here. Forces that are bigger than any of us. Lucy's stomach twisted with unease. What forces? What do you mean? Richard hesitated for a moment before speaking again. Your mother's story, Lucy. It's not just her story. It's yours too. There's more to your past, to your family, than you've been told. I'm not just helping you because I believe in your future. I'm helping because I believe in your connection to something much bigger. Lucy's mind spun. What are you saying? What connection? Richard paused, his gaze unwavering. Sarah Blackwood, your aunt, your real father's twin sister. She was a brilliant scientist, and her research holds the key to something humanity can't afford to lose. I think you're the key to it all. Lucy sat back, stunned. What are you talking about? Sarah Blackwood? My real father? What does this all have to do with me? Richard took a deep breath, his voice low. Sarah's research could change the course of history, but there are people who want it, people who will stop at nothing to control it. And you, Lucy, are the key to unlocking that knowledge. I'm not trying to overwhelm you, but you need to understand that your family's past isn't just about who you were born to. It's about what you're capable of. The words hung heavy in the air as Lucy struggled to process what Richard had just revealed. She had come here thinking that her life was changing, but now it felt like everything she thought she knew was being upended. Suddenly, the door to the study burst open, and Olivia entered, her face pale. Dad, come quick! Ethan's having a seizure! Without a word, Richard was on his feet, rushing out of the room, with Lucy following close behind. As they hurried down the hallway, Lucy's heart pounded in her chest. Ethan, her new friend, the boy who had saved her from the rain and showed her the world of science, he was in trouble. They reached Ethan's room, where doctors were already surrounding him, trying to stabilize him. Olivia stood in the corner, tears streaming down her face. Richard's face was set in grim determination as he watched the doctors work. "Is he going to be okay?" Olivia asked, her voice breaking. "They think it might be related to his condition," one of the doctors explained. "We need to get him to the hospital immediately. These symptoms are consistent with a cerebral hemorrhage." Lucy watched in horror as Ethan's hand weakly reached out toward her. She took it, squeezing it gently. "Stars," he whispered faintly. "Need to see stars. One more time. I promise," Lucy whispered back, her heart aching. "You'll see the stars." As Ethan was wheeled out of the room, Lucy couldn't help but notice a man in a suit standing at the end of the hallway, his eyes fixed on her. When he saw her notice him, he tapped his earpiece, as if signaling something. "They're here," Lucy whispered, her blood running cold. Richard appeared beside her, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We need to talk, Lucy. Now!"